Well, first I just kind of wanted to get on record of what happened, just so I won't forget the steps of what happened. But in the spring, I was having a lot of, um, uh, it's called let's see, what's it called? It's called premature ventricular contractions. That's what it's called. They're called PVCs. They're weird heartbeats. And 10 years or more ago, I went and got them checked out, and it turns out it was completely normal. Most people have them, just most people don't feel them, and so I was real happy with that, and I was pleased with that understanding, and felt them. I've felt them on and off. They're brought on by stress and lack of sleep and things like that. Well, this spring I was at a conference in Orlando, and I started feeling them again, and just assumed it was the same thing. It was stress, it was lack of sleep, and we had a lot going on at church during that time, and so I just assumed it was the same thing, and really still to this day feel like that was what was going on. It was just PVCs due to stress and stuff. And so, but they were really bad. I mean, I never had them quite that sustained like that. And so, when I got back to Little Rock, I told Tanya about them. Or got back home, I told Tanya about them. She wanted me to get them checked out. And so I did, and the doctor said, "No, it's the same thing. Don't worry about it." And as I was leaving, I told the doctor, he says, "Anything else?" And I had literally stood up out of the chair and was ready to walk out. So there's one more thing I was going to tell you about, and told him about this little running thing that I had. About every other time I run, within the first mile, I would get short of breath and would have to stop and catch my breath and then start up again, and everything was fine. And it didn't happen every time; just happened sometimes. And he said, "Well, it's probably your age." He said, your body is going at a faster pace than your heart, and you're stopping to allow your heart to beat faster and to get where it needs to be." And so I was happy with that. And I literally, like I said, I had sat back down, but I got back up, and I was holding the door handle. And he said, "But you know what? Let me call somebody. I'm going to call a second opinion in." And so he calls another cardiologist in Little Rock, and he was really of the same mindset. Well, yeah, that's probably what it is, but let's check it anyway. So they scheduled an angiogram. I didn't want to go. I'd already had the stress echo and all that stuff. And anyway, they scheduled the angiogram where they go in through your wrist and they check out everything and all that. And met with that doctor that morning, and they had already gotten me all IV'd up and all that stuff. And he said, "I am 95% sure that there's nothing to this." He said, "It'll just make me feel better, and it'll make you feel better, knowing that there's nothing to it." And he said, and he apologized. He said, "I'm sorry I'm having to do this to you, but I just really would feel better if we did it." And I said, "Okay, that's fine." So we went ahead and went on with it. And he said that the test will take 45 minutes. And we got back there, and I was consciously sedated, is what they call it. And so I was kind of out of it, but kind of not. I knew what was going on, and I knew it hadn't been long. And turns out it had been about 10 minutes when he shut the test down and said, "You're blocked everywhere you can be blocked. So we're going to have to do something." And so I remember them wheeling me out of the room and past Tanya, and my parents were there. And they were kind of surprised to see me that quickly, and they were assuming the best. And so I remember grabbing Tanya's arm and telling her, I said, "You need to listen, because I'm not really with it, because this is not good." And so she, of course, the expression changed on her face at that point. And so anyway, and what happened after that is kind of a blur, but anyway, so she found out about it, and she had to kind of be the mature one of the three. I think my parents kind of fell apart a little bit, and Tanya, if you know Tanya, is a very emotional person, and to see her as with it as she was that day, and for the weeks to come, really, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, but is really a miracle. I mean, just that God did a work in her life to make her the calm one, which is unusual for her. I'm not saying she's a hysterical maniac, but she usually is a crier, not a worrier, but tends to initially think the worst and then come back to what is the best. That's just her nature. But anyway, so that went down. That was on a Thursday. We met that afternoon with the surgeon, and kind of the same thing. Tanya was real composed and real with it, real listening and understanding and taking it all in. And again, it was still a little bit of a blur to me. But we scheduled that Friday morning. They called me back and said that they had scheduled an appointment for me at Baptist, simply because Baptist was going to be financially beneficial for us because because I was a pastor. I was ordained, which was a godsend in itself, because I knew this was going to be a crazy amount of money. And that was another worry of mine, was how are we going to pay for this? You know, I mean, we just can't afford to drop this much money. And so that all went down over the weekend, on that Friday morning. And then we had surgery on Monday. And then, you know, the rest of it is kind of history, you know, I guess. But the whole process of it it's really interesting, because you can start seeing how God traced His way through all this. When I got back from Orlando with these weird little heart rhythms, my knee was hurting, and I had sprained it. I'd done something to my knee, and didn't think much about it. But looking back, that kept me from running a lot. And so if my heart really was, I mean, if it really was approaching a heart attack, which they tell me that as blocked as I was, running in the heat over this summer would have probably given me a heart attack of some sort, a pretty massive one. And so my knee being hurt was probably God's providence of just slow down. And you know, I was still running a little bit, but it wasn't much, and it was pretty slow, just because my knee was hurting. And so, you know, looking back at things like that, and Tanya continuing to push me to go, and in fact, I had tried to back out of the angiogram because I had something going that day at church, and it was just a waste of my time, I thought. And so, you know, she wouldn't let me back out of it. So, you know, just you can see God just in weird little subtle ways of how He was pushing me to get this taken care of, to get it fixed. And to look into it, even though I didn't really feel like it was going to be an issue, a problem at all. So I think that, I think so many times there's so many ancillary factors that are going on around us that we just ignore them, because, man, we're headstrong. This has got to get done today. In a checklist mentality, God is oftentimes in my life, He's working around me, and I'm tunnel vision, man. I'm focused. I don't need to do that right now. I don't have time to do that right now. You know, to the place where, to my shame, even as a church staff member, you know, I a lot of times will come into church that morning with a checklist, and somebody will come into my office, and how dare they interrupt me with a problem, you know? And it's just, I look back on some of that stuff and think, golly, how crazy was that? Over the summer, I had plenty of time, but I read a book by Wayne Cordero called Sifted, and it's based on the passage that Jesus talked about, how that he had turned his disciples over to be sifted by Satan, and just how they are having to persevere through this sifting phase. It sure doesn't seem like God has a hand in it, because it hurts so much, and because it's so it's just so out of my routine and just scary even. But at the same time, I'm being sifted for a reason. And that really got me thinking and got me started down the whole path of, you know, I need to live my life as if tomorrow's my last day. I've always been not a big procrastinator so much as just there'll be time for that later. I've got a lot to do today. There'll be time for that later. And there may not be. I mean, and it's not just church work, and it's my family, you know, watching them grow up and making sure that, they're good girls, but I don't have that much time with them left, and I need to break away from what I think is important that really isn't, and spend time with them and make sure that they understand the precepts of God and what it is that God wants them to do with their lives. And so, there's just so many, like you said, there's so many things going on around me that I need to quit just staying so tunnel focused on the things of church, the things of just life, the bills, all that stuff that it'll get done, but I need to quit really focusing on that and making sure that the real important things in my life are getting done. The whole idea that tomorrow could be my last, I mean, I don't know. And this surgery really, I was never at the place where I felt like I was going to die. But the time that I was most uncomfortable, I won't say scared, but what I was most uncomfortable was the knowledge that I am now a heart patient, and that at any given moment this could come back. Even though they're repairing it, it could come back, and by all accounts will come back. And so just how fragile life is, and how important it is to be on the right page and to be doing the right things at any given moment. I mean, because the urgency of life, you know, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And so being out of that control, and I am a control guy, I really like to know what's coming. In my own little realm, I do. I like surprises in other realms, but I mean, in my work, I like to know what's coming, and I want to know. And I'm learning to let go of that and say, okay, God, I think this is the way we need to plan, but I certainly don't want to do anything that's not in your plan. So yeah, control is huge, and it allowing myself to let go of that, and which is kind of ironic, let go of it out of my hands to put it to God's hands, that where it came from anyway, which is weird. So I need to learn I am learning to let go of all that and control. So, well, I think that I learned that I'm not bulletproof, and I never got to the place where I never came to the place where I really considered myself. Let me back up. How do I say this? I have the opportunity in my job to counsel and to be part of the healing process of marriage, and you know, some of the healing processes of some depression and things like that I'm able to see a lot, just about every day. And I always kind of had in my mind that that's not me. And you know, I've even had in moments where I've had to counsel some people that have dying relatives and people that are dying themselves. I mean, I see that, and I never got to the place where that's me. And that's probably the biggest thing I've learned out of this is how fragile I am, and how susceptible to not only illness and injury, but to the attacks of the devil into my marriage, into my parenting, into my ministry. And it's a daily thing that I've got to wake up and guard myself and put on something that it's not going to necessarily protect my health so much as it's just going to make sure that I'm heading in the right direction. And so I think that the whole I'm not above it all is really one of the things that God was slapping me on the back of the head about. Is, you know, no, you're not. You're a very fragile person, and at any given time, anything could happen to you, and so you need to be on your guard. And so, yeah, and that's really good. Yeah, and you know, I started doing that for my kids a couple of years ago. I quit praying that God would put them in a bubble. You know, that whole Baptist prayer of the hedge of protection. You know, I quit praying that because I don't necessarily want them to be safe. I don't want them out on their deathbed to say, boy, I look back on my life and I was real safe and I didn't do anything that was scary. Well, gosh, that's not how I want to end my life. I want to have a life that leaves the legacy of, man, he was out there and he was working and he was serving, and he was ministering to people and witnessing to people, and man, he was out there. He was doing some stuff that I'd be scared to death to do. And so I want that for my family as well. Not just my girls, but my wife, my parents, my brother. I mean, my in-laws. I mean, I really, and then in my church family as well. Those that I've been called to minister to. I want them to quit this. We've got to be careful. So I'm with you on that. And you know, and that brings up a real good point about my spiritual and ministerial health. I mean, I was born all the way deep into Little Rock, and I moved here I moved to Bryant when I was 5. I've never known anything but Central Arkansas. That's all I've ever known. And we moved to this church when I was 7. I grew up in this church. I'm now 45 years old. I mean, this is my life. This is who I am. And so it really came me face to face with that too. Is God calling me to something more adventurous, you know, more dangerous, more, you know, John Eldridge talks about the whole idea of of living life as an adventure. And, I don't know that my life has been an adventure. And I'm not looking to leave, and I'm not trying to find another place just so I can go out there and live my life in a crazy way. But I don't want to miss that if God's calling me to that, just simply because, well, this is what seems like, Proverbs 3:5, living on my own understanding. This is my understanding of what life is. And this is my little safe little bubble, my little cocoon that I have here in Bryan. I know everybody, I know everything, I know how things work, I know the school systems, I know this church, I know the politics of this church, I know all the history, I know all that. And it's a blessing. It's a wonderful blessing to live here. My parents are here, and Tanya's parents are here, everybody's here. And it's a wonderful blessing, but at the same time, I don't want to miss something simply because I'm happy here. And I don't, and that's something I preach. I really do. I preach it to my girls all the time. And then I sit down in my rocking chair in my house, watch my TV, watch my football game that I enjoy so much, and ask people to just leave me alone, because this is what's comfortable to me. Yeah, I need some downtime. Yes, that's right. And I do. Physically, everybody needs some downtime, but I've got plenty. Hebrews 11:6 says, without faith, it's impossible to please God. And that's all I want to do. 2 Corinthians 5:9 says that whether I'm at home or away, I make it my goal to please God. So if I'm making it my goal to please God, without faith, it's impossible to please God. Where's my faith? What is it about working here, living here, being around all the people that I know and love that really exhibits my faith? And I have to ask myself that a lot. Is this really a display to God of faith for me to be here? Making a good salary, having all the things that I want. And I don't know what that means. I really don't, but I'm wrestling with that. I really am. And that is one of the things. That's probably, that kind of goes along with you ask, what's the one thing that I learned? That really is probably the thing that I'm wrestling with the most, is and trying to learn. Okay, God, what are you trying to tell me here? If I am being sifted, if I am, being asked to display my faith in some way, what's that look like? And it could very well be here in Bryan. I'm again, if somebody ends up seeing this video and thinks I'm trying to leave the church, I'm not. I'm really not. If there is somebody watching this video that's in our church, I would dare you to do the same thing. What's God calling you to do? And it may be outside the realm of your rocking chair. It scares me to death. But wow, at the end of the day, at the end of my life, I was reading a book this morning by Hugh Halter that talks about leaving a legacy, and your legacy is far more than preparing sermons and creating breakout discipleship groups and things like that. Those are wonderful things, but how many people did you actually impact for the gospel? How many people will look back on your life and say that guy did something that God wanted him to do for me? How many people, and I want to make sure I'm doing that. So that's one of the big things for me right now. So some of the things I've learned through my heart surgery, and some of these analogies that are so prevalent to me, the whole analogy of the Christian life. If you look at your Christian life as your heart, one of the things that I have learned is that I would have not had heart surgery had it not been for Tanya. Okay, so in an evangelistic point of view, if you look at it like that, there are people out there that need Christ that will not just decide on their own, well, I've got some really weird symptoms in my life. I guess I need to go get those checked out. They need somebody to push it. They need somebody to, the thing that struck me the most about, the reason I went to the doctor was not because Tanya told me to, was because she implored me to. She wanted me to, and she said, and as we found out what was going on, her heart for me was, I just can't describe it. Her love for me displayed itself in a way I've never seen before, and it melted me. And that's the kind of love that we are to have for other people. We are supposed to love them enough to tell them, man, your heart is messed up, and to the place where you've got to get it fixed. And I know somebody that can fix it. And so that was the next thing that I learned, that no matter how messed up my heart was, I couldn't fix it myself. Number one, I'm not brave enough to cut myself down the chest and crack myself open. I can't. And even if I could, then I wouldn't know what to do once I got there. And so we needed help. And so Tanya took me to somebody that could help. She took me to a surgeon that was skilled in all these things. And in a spiritual analogy here, she took me to Christ. And I said, fix his heart and repair him. And so that all went down. And again, it was from the imploring of Tanya that I did this. And so she took me to this doctor, and the doctor fixed my heart. And then as he closed me up, he gave me some instructions on what to do now. Well, that's when the church comes in. So he left me in the hospital for a little while. And those first few weeks, the first week I was in the hospital, man, I got visits and cards and letters and phone calls and tweets and Facebook posts and all these wonderful things about how people were so excited that I was okay, and that and about my new life. Now I'm going to feel so good, and my heart is, it's in a good place, and you're going to be able to run, and you're going to be able to do all these things. And how encouraging everybody was. And then I got home, and it was the same thing for a week or two. People would drop by and bring me stuff to eat, and oh, it's just so wonderful. And they'd call and make sure I had everything I needed and all that. And then as the weeks go on, it got less and less. And the analogy there is that's exactly what the church does. And it's not necessarily a slap in the face to the church, but it's something that we really need to work on. And I'm learning this as a pastor. We're really good at, if somebody comes to Christ, we're really good at getting them baptized, getting them involved, and patting them on the back and telling them how great things are, and that we love them and all that. And then we'll do that for a few weeks. We might even get them in a small group or something, and for a few weeks it'll be great. And then we just kind of forget about them, and we move on. And that's something that I believe that the church, not just our church, but the church, really needs to learn and come along and figure out not only how do we evangelize people, but how do we disciple them? How do we love them? And we love them because we love them, not because it's a checklist and not any of that. It's that we love them. And I go back to Tanya again. Tanya, to this day, is still very concerned about me and still wants to have the absolute best for me. Yeah, she's my wife and she's supposed to. I understand all that, but I can't describe to you. I guess it's because it's indescribable. The love I felt from her is the love I want to exhibit to people that need Christ, and that once they come to Christ, that I continue to love them, and I continue to nurture them and develop them and show them, man, now that you've got this new heart, and here's all the things you can do with it. And not only are you supposed to have this new heart, you're supposed to tell other people about how great your heart is and how that this surgeon down the road can take care of your heart when it gets messed up, because it is messed up. Everybody's, and really, truly, that's true. Everybody's heart is messed up. They may not need surgery on it per se, but spiritually speaking, everybody's heart's messed up. And so everybody needs this surgeon to come alongside them and tell them what they need to do to fix it. And then I guess the last analogy on that is kind of to continue on with where Tanya is with me. Some of the things I'm having to do, I'm having to change my life now. I'm having to eat things that I don't want to eat. And I know I'm supposed to, but it's just not convenient. I was really good at swinging through McDonald's and grabbing a double cheeseburger and heading back to work. It was fast, it was convenient, filled me up, everything was good, But now I can't swing through a restaurant without wondering, what in here can I eat that's healthy for me? And I need help with that. I would love for somebody, literally would love for somebody to sit down with me and say, here are all the great things at fast food restaurants that you can eat. Because even if I read about them, and I see the nutrition content and all that stuff, I don't really know, because I'll eat something that I think is good for me, and then somebody else says, oh no, that's not good for you at all. I would love for somebody that's an expert to tell me, man, here are the 12 things that at Bryant, in the restaurants in Bryant, here's what you can eat. Go by and get you that, because it's fast, it's easy, and maybe there's nothing, I don't know. But for somebody to come alongside me, and that's where mentoring comes in. Somebody that I can, when I come to Christ, I need somebody to come alongside me for not just a period of the next 3 months, but for the rest of my life. I need somebody to be my friend and to help me understand, here's what you can eat, here's what you can't eat, here are the things that you need to do now, here's your running schedule. You don't need to go off and do too much right now just yet, because you'll burn yourself out, you'll hurt yourself. You need to take some small steps and learn to grow. And we have to trust those guys that they have met with Christ and they have met with God to know what they're telling me is true. And they're going to mess up, they are. And then it ends up being it ends up being a mutual mentorship, because when I start growing in my faith, it really encourages the guy that's mentoring me, and he thinks, well, I remember that in my life. I remember how excited I was when I figured that out. And so it encourages them to go back to that place in their life. And so there's this balance. And then, and then as you grow together, then it's not really a mentorship as just much as a partnership. You'll never outgrow each other, but you're growing toward God in different rates. And so, it's just a wonderful thing to do. One of the things that I'm struggling with is, if you look at heart surgery today versus heart surgery 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, man, it's changed. And one of the things that I was talking with my cardiologist, and I'm concerned about my life. I'm concerned, how are we going to find this again? Because we just stumbled on this. All the tests that we had ever done, that you'll do in a regular cardiologist office, will not turn over what my problem is. And so we're going to have to do some more extensive tests. And so I'm concerned about what do we do next. And this is supposed to last me 15 to 20 years. Well, I hope I'm still around 50. I'll just be 60, So I'm going to have to get this done again. I'm going to have to get something done again, probably. And so I'm concerned about how we're going to do it. Well, the cardiologist told me, he said, man, there's no telling where medical technology will be in 15 years. There's just no telling. He said, they may be able to do everything laparoscopic. We have no idea. You may be able to do things through the angiogram, with stents and things like that. He said, there's so many great technological things that are coming along. He said, a lot of times now they're putting in artificial grafts that have stents in them. And he said, we could do, you just don't have any idea. He said, try not to worry about it, because what you know now is not an understanding of where we will be in 15 years. My dad had this same surgery done in 95, which was, 18 years ago. And the things that my dad had to go through are completely and totally different than things I'm having to go through. Point is this, the heart doesn't change. The technology on how to get to the heart changes, and the culture around us changes. The hospital stays change. The nurses change. Everything changes, but the heart stays the same. And my concern for the church is that we're not changing, and that we are continuing to be the outdated hospital, and we're continuing to do the same procedures where we're reaching fewer and fewer people because there's much better technology, and I'm not interested in getting my heart fixed by you, because you're looking at life in reverse. You're looking at it 20 years ago. And so my concern for the church is that we're continuing on our same path, by golly, it worked 25 years ago. It's got to still continue to work. And we're going to do Sunday school. We're going to study for 20 hours a week and deliver a 30-minute sermon, where we could take those 20 hours a week and we could really minister to people. We still got to study for a sermon, but my concern is that we're going to continue to do life, that we're going to continue to do church in the same way while life around us changes. And we're not going to reach the people, we're going to reach church people. What we wanted to do, in my estimation, is we want to coddle those that have already had their hearts fixed. And we want to make sure that they're eating their soup that they're supposed to eat. And we're not setting them out, we're not sending them out with their repaired hearts to a place where they can tell other people how to repair their hearts. For those 6 weeks that I was at my home, when people would come by, and that's right, they'd come by, they'd bring me food, they'd bring me a movie or something that I could just sit there and enjoy and relax. Man, that's great. That's exactly right. But then after that 6 weeks, I had to go back to work. I did. I got to pay the bills. I got to get back to work. We're not sending people to work. We're leaving them here in the church to learn and to grow and to eat the soup and to enjoy each other's company and their fellowship and all these things. And we're really not encouraging them to find out how God's gifted you, what it is, what's your passion in life, what do you want to do, and then sending them on the adventure and not worrying about them, and just sitting out and God's going to take care of you. Go get it. If that means completely leaving the city, or that means, God forbid, I don't want this to happen, but if my children need to go to another country or something to serve God, man, what an honor that would be for me as a parent to send my kids. Wow. Or, anybody in my family for that matter,
and for myself, you know, I mean, what an honor it would be to go for God somewhere, even if it's to bauxite, you know, I mean, it doesn't have to be a major move or anything. And he sent, you know, he sent Timothy. He sent, you know, and even there were times even in his life where Paul, you know, he had all these partners, and he'd have a season in his life with Barnabas. He had a season in his life with Silas, and then he got to where, you know, I don't really see eye to eye with you anymore, but you're doing a great work. Go do it somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And that's what church became. Church became the place where you came together and told the stories of what all God was doing in your life. And it was a time of refreshing and renewal and relaxing and just being able to hang out with each other and tell them, man, I talked to this guy, and I got beat up by this guy, and I was shipwrecked over here. Man, all these things were going on in my life, and I got some stories to tell you, and I'm so glad you're sitting here listening to me. And then after that, you go out and do some more. And that's what church is, and that's what I want our church to become, or the church to become. And it just burdens me to see all these churches, and our churches included. It just burdens me to see all these churches that just are content doing church. And meeting the same needs and the same people, and it's not that their needs don't need to be met, but I need to train you to meet your own needs and to let God meet your needs and find your people around you. That's wonderful. I don't have any problem with that. But God didn't save you to watch you sit and grow. He saved you for you to sit, grow, and then get up and go.